OTAs start next week, and we finally get to the end of rookie minicamp. So, let's first get into the news. As the Broncos starting right tackle, Juwan James, has been released by the Denver Broncos. This comes after he got injured at his home while working out and was put on the non-football related injury list. Now, this, I have to talk about this, but let's fully get through it. Releasing him, and they are not going to pay the $10 million that they owe him. Expect his camp to fight that, was the report from Ian Rappaport. This is like one of those things that it's just not fair as a player, because as a veteran player, and as well as any player in the NFL, you work out at the facility, obviously, but you also work out at home. You eat right at home. You eat right at the facility, but you eat right at home. You're working out at home. And obviously, in these unprecedented times, that's what you've always been doing for the last year, year and a half. So to not have the ability to go and say, oh, I got hurt at home, and now I'm getting released by the team, and I'm not getting paid, I'm not going to get my $10 million that I thought I was going to get. It's very upsetting if you have to be Juwan James. Because here's how this works. If you're hurt at your team's facility, whether you're on the practice field, in the gym, or in the weight room, if you're hurt there, they have to pay you. No matter what, they got to pay you. But if you're hurt at home, or you're driving and you get into a car accident, they don't have to pay you. They don't have to. Now, they can. We've seen some instances where players have been in accidents but gotten paid. But that's not, this case is not going to happen. And maybe a lot of that's because also last year Juwan James opted out. But that's sour grapes at this point. I think if you're Juwan James' camp, you got to fight this. But now you have, in terms of the NFL, you got like this big fight, this big fist fight that we are in now. You have Juwan James' camp in the NFLPA. Then you got the NFL against the NFL and the Denver Broncos, as well as on the Juwan James' camp side, as all the other players in the league. So it's not a fair fight, because at this point, the NFLPAs are going to be like, well, what do you want us to do? What do you want them to do? You want them not to work out at home and come to the building overweight? Come to the building where they're not in shape, and that we have to whip them into shape in only such a small period of time, and they can't have extra days at the facility, usually, because we are not there. And we are busy doing our stuff, so we can't keep them in shape during the off season. So it's their responsibility. But if they get hurt, why don't they deserve to be paid? Because they are working out, they're doing what we've asked them to do. So it's a very on again, off again thing. And now the NFL's gonna be like, yeah, you should pay him, or yes, you should keep him on your roster, but he won't really count against the salary cap or whatever. Or they're going to be like, no, you don't have to. Because the Broncos have a choice that if he's not at the facility, they don't have to pay him. So it's really just very confusing. But I can guarantee you, either next year in the rule book, or when they go do a CBA in how many years, this will be put on the new CBA that you have to pay a guy if he's working out. You don't have to if he's not, but if he's working out at his home or at the facility, you have to pay him. And if he gets hurt, you have to pay him. And I think that's fair, but I also think that what classifies as work. So there's a very much a gray area between what you're doing, but I think if you're Juwan James, you do want to have that ability to have $10 million. And I mean, who doesn't? But especially when you're working out, you're trying to stay in shape because you're a veteran, you know how this goes. Or even as a young player, you know how this goes. There's an 18-game season, and now I got hurt, and now I'm not going to get paid, and now I lost my job, and now I have to go try to find something else. It's very hard in this life as an NFL player. The Rams draft pick Tutu Atwell has signed his rookie deal, along with Denver Broncos cornerback Patrick Surtain signed his rookie deal. Continuing with the Broncos wide receiver Deshaun Hamilton tears his ACL away from facility, was likely to be traded, not waived. Now, again, this is a very interesting situation because of the Juwan James situation. Now, you're going to have people in the situation say, well, if Hamilton gets paid, why doesn't Juwan James get paid? And if Juwan James gets paid, why doesn't Hamilton get paid? And if they don't get paid, then you're going to be like, well, why are they not getting paid? So it's very confusing at this point. But it's a shame if you're Deshaun Hamilton as well as Juwan James because you worked so hard to get to this point, and now you're hurt and you can't play in the season. In an expanded year, where your team may have a chance to make the playoffs. Because how many teams don't make the playoffs, but if they had one more game, they probably could have. It does happen, and now with that ability, you're not going to be able to play. It's a shame. Washington football team signs safety Bobby McCain. This is not surprising. Ron Rivera actually worked out Bobby McCain in Carolina, but they chose Trey Boston over him. Bobby McCain is also the former safety of the Miami Dolphins before they decided to release him early in the offseason, about 2-3 weeks ago. And now, finally, Ron Rivera's got his guy. Now in Washington, with a much better defense and an improving offense. Moving more into that division, Zach Ertz, once out of Philadelphia, won't come to camp. Now, this is not a shocker at all. Zach Ertz said he doesn't want to stay in Philadelphia because he felt like, not last year, but the year previously, he deserved to play and get a contract. And that's not what happened. He didn't get a contract. And last year, you could easily tell he was struggling because he kept thinking, I gotta get a contract so I can stay here. And now, no, you didn't get a contract. But I'm still here. But I don't want to be here because the quarterback keeps changing. Everything keeps changing. Coaches change, everything's changing. I don't want to be here anymore. Now, is he going to pull out the Aaron Rodgers coach saying, I'm not going to come, you got to trade me, which he probably is at this point. He's pretty much giving them two options. Either trade me or release me. Either way, I don't want to be here. But who knows? Who knows what happens? The Indianapolis Colts, before signing Eric Fisher, explored the idea of moving All-Pro left guard Quentin Nelson to left tackle. Now, if you understand, Quentin Nelson played 3 years in the NFL. He's been to the Pro Bowl 3 times. He's been an All-Pro 3 times. He reminds me a lot of Zach Martin in terms of, as we saw last year, you could move Zach anywhere on the offensive line, and he'd be successful. They moved him from guard to tackle, and even though he was only there for a game, he dominated. He dominated that game. So I believe you could have done the same thing with Quentin Nelson, but who would have been the guy at guard now? You don't know. So it's good that they didn't have to get to that point, but it would have been interesting to see what would have happened. Dak Prescott is expected to participate in OTAs, which will be next week. He has a quote for his new wide receivers saying that we are going to light up the league, end quote. That is understandable because in the 5 games that Dak played, he almost had 2,000 passing yards. And Dak has been talking around this offseason saying a few weeks ago that the next game on the first game Thursday night against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is more important. It's more important than the Bucs or the rings, which Dak obviously knows that's the end goal is the Super Bowl. But he's trying to say, if we beat a Super Bowl team, it's going to show people that the Cowboys are going to be ready to go. Because we just beat a Super Bowl team. And we just beat potentially the greatest quarterback to ever live. So, yes, he's been talking. Yes, he knows the Super Bowl is the end goal, but he's trying to fire these guys up. And the ability, if he can play as well as he did in those first 5 games all this year, he's going to be worth that $40 million that they gave him. The Giants signed former first-round wide receiver Kelvin Benjamin to play tight end. This is obviously starting a trend where players are changing positions at the age of 30. Tim Tebow is changing from quarterback to tight end in Jacksonville. Now Kelvin Benjamin, who we haven't heard of a lot since he was in Buffalo, now changing to tight end in New York. There was a little bit of a message at one point in time that Kelvin Benjamin was one of the laziest receivers. He didn't want to stay in shape. He tried to stay in shape. That's kind of a hard thing to break at that point. So you got to show them that you can do that. The Giants also signed Clement, who was one of the guys who changed the rules in the Super Bowl for was a completed catch. Of where you have to have control. At that time you had to have control through the whole point of the catch. Now you only have to have control at a point at that catch. You don't have to have it all the way through. The Washington football team are likely to move on from offensive tackle Morgan Moses, who was their tackle last year and for many years. He's played right tackle. Last year he moved to left tackle because they had so many injuries. They are now allowing Moses to seek a trade. And this either means two things. That Moses is on his way out of the league sooner rather than later, or that the Washington football team are confident in the players behind him. Which I don't know if you can be at this point. It doesn't seem to be that way because of how good Morgan Moses is. And I think he's very underrated as an offensive tackle. Believe me, I'm a Cowboys fan. I've seen him play. He's incredible. He's big. He moves very well. And he'll be aggressive when he has to be, but he'll stand up for his quarterback no matter what. So it's whether they have a good relationship or a bad relationship, it doesn't matter. He'll stand up for them. And that's the sign of a good teammate. The Eagles signed former Washington football team offensive outside linebacker and defensive end Ryan Kerrigan. This is a sting, I think, a little bit for. This gives us there's a little punch to the gut, I think, from the Eagles saying, hey, we're gonna bring in a guy who was in Washington for 10 years. That puts a little punch right in the gut of Washington football team and of their fan base. Going to the rival? Are you kidding me? That's the way the NFL works. Now, it's not like Washington fully needed him, because they have Chase Young, Payne, Josh Allen. But if one of those guys got hurt, you could have plugged him in and say, oh, we'll be fine, because he'll be successful no matter what we do. Now he's in Philadelphia. Now you got to face him 2 times a year. Also, Ryan Kerrigan is the only guy to have the most sacks in Washington football team's history. Antonio Brown had knee surgery, according to Bruce Arians, early in the offseason, and if he passes his physical, his contract will be official, which is the usual way that free agent contracts work. That's usually how it works. You pass your physical, you get your contract. That's how it works. Former Jacksonville Ryan Kerrigan signed with the Eagles on a 1-year deal. Former Jacksonville Jaguars and New England Patriots wide receiver Marquis signs with the 49ers. Now, I have a reason to say this. I believe if you opt out after signing a contract with another team, when you come back, that contract should still be valid. You didn't go through that 1 year. Even though you technically did, you didn't go through you didn't play. So to me, that should have been, yeah, but now you come back and you have to play with this team still. But on the flip side, you look at it and you're like, well, if I was a running back and if I was 24, 25, that wouldn't bother me. But if I was 30 or 32 and now opt out and I come back the next year and I'm 33, that's a big deal. So it's the way you look at it, but in my opinion, they should have said, well, that contract's not valid because he shouldn't have been able to leave because it's not valid. He still technically signed, unless the Patriots would have traded him, but he opted out and they didn't do that. The New England Patriots re-signed Brian Hoyer. This is more for a veteran experience type of thing, but I don't understand this. This is why you had Cam Newton to mentor Mac Jones. Why did you bring in Brian Hoyer? It makes no sense. Because Cam was a starter, and Cam is the starter in New England for at least this point. Brian Hoyer's never really been a starter. Never, and he's never been successful at it. He's always really stunk no matter where he's gone. He's never been good. I think his best year he was in Cleveland. And that was it. So, I don't fully get it. I don't. It's a 1-year deal, so I guess there's no bad 1-year deals, but I don't understand this. Because you also have Cam Newton on a 1-year deal, so it doesn't make much sense. Trade Joshua Scott, former Jacksonville Jaguars cornerback, gets traded to the Philadelphia Eagles in exchange for Jamison Houston and the Eagles cornerback and a 6th-round pick. This doesn't really matter. They were low on the depth chart, so in a 6th-round pick, you're not really wasting anything at that point. If it was a 4th-round pick, sure, but it's a 6th-round pick. You're not wasting too much. Drauntarius Bryant gets an NFL tryout after being victim to a hoax that was played on him. Drauntarius Bryant lives in Atlanta and got a phone call that was a trick that said he was defense coordinator for the Falcons, Dean Peeves, and said he had a tryout and he didn't. So now he finally gets an NFL tryout, just like Colin Kaepernick did a few years ago, where the whole scouts got to go and watch him before he ended up moving facilities and only so many that were half an hour away, only pushed the time back about half an hour with traffic, so only so many people could get there. But he finally gets a tryout. He's 27 years old, never made a roster, never made a practice squad roster, so he's going to have to prove a lot. And finally, the Cowboys bring in Hundley in for a visit. Former Green Bay Packers backup quarterback, former Arizona Cardinals backup quarterback. Mike McCarthy coached him when he was in Green Bay. He also played for the Baltimore Ravens as a backup quarterback during the playoff game when Lamar Jackson got hurt. This is also because the Cowboys aren't confident. The Cowboys feel like, oh, look at him. Look at how backups besides Dak. If you look at our quarterback situation besides Dak Prescott, we have Garrett Gilbert, Ben DiNucci, and Cooper Rush. All combined with a total of 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Well, Brett Hundley has some experience. He's played longer than Dak, actually, in terms of the NFL. He's just never played in as many games. He has a total of 9 touchdowns and 13 interceptions. So he has more touchdowns combined than the other 3, but more interceptions combined than the other 3. But what do you guys think? Do you like the idea of Ryan Kerrigan going to the Philadelphia Eagles? And what do you think about the Juwan James situation? You decide.